And greetings. Welcome here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Okay, well, I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Davis Clark. I am 26 and a former foster youth. I was in foster care from the age of 12 to the age of 18 when I emancipated. And so I just want to kind of briefly go through my educational experience while I was in care. So I do remember I had a lot of struggles in school, especially with math, like the research was.
And your home was where?
Yeah.
I mean, just county-wise, I'm just asking. Where in California?
Technically, it would be in Sacramento, yeah.
Yeah, Sacramento.
But I was in a total of seven schools, 2 middle schools, 5 high schools. I was lucky enough to graduate from my high school of origin, which that's pretty rare. And I was in a total of 13 placements. 7 of them were group homes, so I was a group home kid, basically. I think my last placement wasn't a foster home, but it was one of those that kind of really cared more about the check than the kid. So after I emancipated, I was lucky enough to graduate from high school, so that was great. I started college, and it was very difficult. I moved in with my biological parents. My mom tried to rebuild that relationship that was broken through foster care, and that didn't work out.
She tried to rebuild?
I tried to rebuild my relationship with my mom, and that didn't work out. So she basically kicked me out of the house a year after emancipating. So I was homeless at 19. My first year of college was okay. I went to ARC. And I had to drop out because, again, I was homeless, and I didn't really go back to college for a number of years because I was struggling trying to find a place to stay. Once I was lucky enough to have a really good IOP social worker at the time who enrolled me into transitional housing. I stayed at the Laverne Adolfo program for 2 years and graduated that program.
At Mather?
Yes.
Yeah, there, yeah, the Propeller building.
Yeah, it's a great program. And while I was over there, I went to Sierra College. I restarted my my college career at Sierra College. And while I was over there, I mean, it was just amazing the fact that they cared about their youth so much. I mean, the first week I registered.
Is that the Adolfo?
Not only at Adolfo, but at Sierra College.
How'd you get there? That's a long haul.
Yeah, it's kind of a strike mission. One of my friends that was over there actually went over there, and she was just telling me about how well they treated their foster youth, in terms of connecting them to services. And so I just took a chance and just went over there, and I was just blown away by how amazing their EOPS program was, about how they connected us to services, and just how they treated us, not really as a file, but just as a family. It was definitely a family setup when I was over there. And
So would you say that in your life that was a particularly good connection?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very positive?
Absolutely, yes. And because of that, because I had all those awesome services, I graduated, finally. I graduated last year with my associates in sociology, and I'm now at Sac State majoring in social work. And hopefully my plan is to work in public policy, so maybe I could sit by you. Mm-hmm. Just saying. So yeah, and so.
My daughter-in-law just was a CSU graduate last Friday.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's going to take me a long time, though.
Well, it took her a while.
Yeah. And so, so I think one of the things I just want to leave here is just that one of the struggles I always had was outreach. When I went to my first college, there wasn't much outreach for foster youth services. And the counselors really, again, this is 2007. I'm sure the program is better now, but when I was going there back in the day, it needed a lot of work. And so I think every foster youth deserves to have the experience I had, in terms of getting your cap and gown paid for college, because that's expensive. To graduate from college, that's like $100-some, and we don't have that money. So, just having that support, that was everything, and that's why I graduated. And, and as y'all very well know, there's the percentage of foster youth graduating from college is very, very, very low. And I'm very lucky to be one of those few. So, yeah, and that'll be it. Thank you.
And you were at the Adolfo how long?
I was there for 2 years.
Yeah.
I did the whole program and graduated. Yeah.
Yeah. And that stability was good?
Absolutely. I mean, because you got to think, you know, we already went through so many different placements while in care, and then you have to worry about that aftercare. I mean, just that stability made a huge difference for me. I mean, there was a team that worked with me. I had a caseworker of sorts. I mean, I also had mental health services because I was struggling with that as well. And, you know, I think, like I said earlier, you know, every foster youth should have that support. And thank goodness for AB 12, because now that's totally expanding for all the youth to have that type of support now. So, yeah, it was definitely helpful for me. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, who's next?
Next, we're going to have Laura, who's a current foster youth.
Very good. Hello, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
Well, I'm Laura.
Okay.
I'm 16 years old. I'm currently residing in a foster home in the South area. I've been to about 20 schools my whole life, and I've been to...
Have you had it, so not many academic years you've been at one school?
I just finished my sophomore year.
Yeah. But if you've been to 20 schools, you've been multiple schools in a year?
Yeah.
Often? Mm-hmm. When was the last time you stayed at one school for the whole year?
7th grade.
Seventh
I think
grade.
that's the only year I've ever stayed. the whole
Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
You're doing fine, so just take a deep breath. Very glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me think, sorry. Okay. I'm shy.
Oh, you're fine.
What's been hard for me, moving around so much, I'm actually pretty smart, but my grades don't reflect that because I never stay long enough at a school, and I move so often that I'm at all schools are at different levels or different times teaching the same subject. I've had to repeat subjects over and over again because public schools don't do partial credits, and that's the only thing I can receive. And so that's been pretty hard for me because my grades don't reflect my capabilities, and that really sucks. I went to a good school, Intercom High School. I started my freshman year there. And they accepted me into the Seeker program, the California Early College program, and so if I would have stayed there, I would have had all 4 years of high school set for me. I would have started taking community college at ARC my sophomore, junior, and senior year, and I would have been on track to graduate if I would have stayed. They also funded for me to play basketball, and I had to quit the team because I moved. So that was devastating. And
Now, when you say you moved,
I moved foster homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my worst experience out of school, I was in Santa Rosa at a group home, and technically it was a charter school, so it was on campus, but they only accepted the group home kids to go there, and all we did was sit in a classroom, and there was ages from like 11 to 19, and there was one teacher trying to teach us everything, and we were obviously at all different levels, and they'd sit on their phone at the desk, and we'd watch movies all day. And I advocated to please teach us, we're not learning anything, get us new books, and no one did anything at all. And there's been gaps of me being out of school because a foster child is supposed to be admitted on the spot. And they try to take advantage of our limited knowledge, and they won't accept us. I've had to wait like 3 months to get into school one time because I couldn't get a doctor's appointment to get a shot. Weeks usually to even get into a school. So there's a big gap in my education. So it's just been pretty tough.
What are your hopes for the future?
I'd like to be a foster youth lawyer. Yeah. because my lawyer's been the biggest support for me. She's always been a rock, and she's pretty much the only stability I have, and she's always been there to support me in all aspects of my life, and it's inspired me so much.
And how do you access your lawyer? When did you first meet her?
When did I first meet her?
Yeah.
Obviously at court. Me and my brothers, we were pretty much new, and so ever since then we've just had an amazing relationship. She's always been able to advocate for every single one of us and all of our needs, visitation, keeping in contact with my family. If I want to stay at a school, she'll advocate for that. If something's not right, she'll call somebody up and make sure it's going the right way.
Thank you.
Very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did very well. And particularly, I mean, I apologize actually for asking you questions. You were doing fine. Then I started asking questions to sort of get you off track a little bit, but you did. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing.
For having me.
Yeah. And if for both of you, if there's some final word you want to say, once the spotlight's off you, if you think of something else you'd like to say, you'll have an opportunity to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Assemblymember Cooley, for having me here today. My name is Molly Dunn, and I'm a senior policy attorney with the Alliance for Children's Rights. The Alliance for Children's Rights believes that every foster child deserves a high-quality education that will enable them to pursue their academic and career dreams. Our attorneys in Los Angeles are advocating for foster youth in their education every day in both special education and general education matters. We're also deeply engaged with implementation of the local control funding formula at the local level. And there's no question that LCFF is a tremendous leap forward for our foster youth. It not only makes the achievement gap that was once invisible visible, but it requires every district in the state to offer improved and increased services to close that achievement gap that foster youth experience. Early implementation efforts, however, show that the vast majority of school districts have not developed comprehensive or even coherent plans for addressing foster youth's educational needs. Most of the district local control accountability plans make no specific mention of foster youth. So clearly there's a great amount of work to be done at the local level in implementing LCFF. But we also need to continue to pay attention to foster youth educational needs here at the state level. Foster youth are just 1% of our school-age population, and they're the most vulnerable sector of our population. They're also our kids. They're the state's kids. And that means that they're going to need the continued support and protection of the state to ensure that LCFF lives up to its promise to them. And there are steps that the legislature is taking right now that need to be supported. First, there's Assembly Bill 379, authored by Mr. Gordon, and that would ensure that the set of existing educational rights and protections that foster youth have and have had for nearly 10 years can actually be enforced. These rights include, well, first of all, they're aimed at improving school stability and ameliorating the effects of instability when there's no choice but for the student to move schools. And they include, among others, the right to immediate enrollment, something that we just heard Laura has not gotten the benefit of quite routinely, the right to earn partial credits, even though Laura said that, you know, public school foster youth don't have the right to partial credits. In fact, they do, but we know that that's not being implemented everywhere. They also have the right to alternative graduation requirements if they had to transfer high schools during their junior or senior year. And there are a host of other rights. And again, these rights were passed in 2004 and have been, those body of rights have been added to since then. And they're a really wonderful and necessary set of rights for our foster youth. And California has really led the country in passing laws to protect foster youth and to help them succeed in school. But unfortunately, they're not being implemented uniformly. And part of the problem is that there's been no way to enforce those laws. There might be a lawyer like me, if a foster youth can get to an organization like the Alliance for Children's Rights, who can get on the phone and go up the chain of command at the district and try to enforce those rights. But there is no mechanism. So what Assembly Bill 379 would do is add those foster youth education rights to the state's existing uniform complaint procedure process, so that there is somewhere to go to have those rights enforced, and there's a process for doing so when students are not getting the protections that they should be getting.
Can you elaborate on the current uniform complaint procedure, just for my
Sure.
elucidation, Counselor?
Yes, the uniform complaint procedure is longstanding, and it's used by the Department of Education to resolve a variety of different kinds of complaints. Included are complaints about harassment and discrimination and bullying. There are also student fee awards was added in the last few years when schools charge illegal student fees for things like textbooks or school materials that are necessary to learn. And there's sort of a whole variety. Also, special education complaints can go through the uniform complaint process. The process starts at the local school district level, and I think in most cases is resolved at that level. And then there's an appeal to the State Department of Education when it hasn't been satisfactorily resolved at the local level.
So the general structure does get complaints heard, and somebody looks at them. That's your sort of experience. So getting it treated as one that's coming in and has to be processed that way will just make sure, give you more prospect that people are paying attention to it and considering what's our obligation here.
Yes, that's our hope, and we really believe that with that spotlight of attention on these types of issues, that the vast majority are going to get resolved at the local level. And
at a minimum, people realize there is a partial credit issue, for example, because the law, it's a complaint people can raise.
yes.
Yeah, I can see how it can start to educate people that these are real things they need to reckon with.
Yeah, some districts do a great job with it, but unfortunately many others don't. And it kind of makes sense. If a district has only had a few foster youth, each year come through their school, they may not have the level of awareness they need about the rights that are afforded to these youth.
Mm-hmm.
Another bill that's pending right now is Assembly Bill 854, and that bill is authored by Dr. Weber. There's also a related budget request that would make critical modifications to the Foster Youth Services program to better align it with the local control funding formula. As Mr. Jackson was stating, Foster Youth Services has been a long-standing program since 1981, and of course LCFF is a new program, so figuring out how the two can support one another to improve foster youth educational success is a process that we're going through right now, and 854 tackles that issue. It first and foremost would make foster youth services available to all foster youth in California. Right now, the definition of foster youth under the Foster Youth Services Program is much narrower than the definition we use under the local control funding formula. And the Foster Youth Services definition excludes kids in certain types of placements, including relative placements that I know
Does
you
that
care
get
so
into
much
the
about.
issue of, he was talking about, we had an account and we've got a new count, and the counts are a little bit different because you're
Yes.
moving populations? Okay.
Yes. Right now, foster youth services can only serve about 1/3 of our school-age foster youth. And 8B 854 and the budget request would expand that to serve all of the same youth that count as foster youth under the local control funding formula. And it would also, it's more than tweak, it would sort of take a look at the Foster Youth Services Program and all of the knowledge and expertise that you were talking about with Mr. Jackson, and emphasize the role in providing technical assistance to school districts in serving foster youth, and really expand their capability to do that. And I think that's essential, as you heard Mr. Jackson and others talk about. This interagency collaboration is essential. It's the only way we're going to be able to tackle what I see as the #1 barrier of foster youth educational success, and that's school instability. And unless we have child welfare and probation and mental health and the schools all at the same table. And truthfully, moving past collaboration to shared responsibility, we're not going to be able to make a dent. A child simply cannot learn if they're being bounced from school to school to school. So 854 will really help take the knowledge that has built up over the last 30 years in the foster youth services program and get that to the school districts who are now tasked with providing direct services to foster youth.
So that was actually a good line of inquiry on my part to understand what they're doing. And it just seemed to me, I've been having this conversation with my colleagues in another area where what we know is that we have expertise in these public agencies which have been cultivated by the expenditure of tax dollars over time. And so that becomes a public resource. It may be in this agency or that agency, but it's accumulated learning that the taxpayers paid for. And from time to time, new issues come up. You need to ask them to be willing to disgorge what they've learned to help us solve a different problem that the legislature identifies. So that's sort of, that's sort of how I think that's our job in the legislature to figure, okay, what's the problem we need to solve? What's the most pressing matter? What are the tools in the toolkit, and how do we bring it to bear and break down barriers? But it also includes the resource questions. But, okay.
Looking beyond this year, although I'm happy to report that both AB 379 and AB 854 have moved off the suspense calendar as of today, but looking forward into the future, we're definitely going to need to continue working on school stability for foster youth. And one step that the legislature may want to consider is continuing to collect data regarding educational stability of foster youth. We've got a great baseline that was set by the Invisible Achievement Gap Report, but school stability metrics are not included anywhere under the local control formula or anywhere else in our law. And we know that you care about what is measured, and so one way we can continue to look at school stability is, and emphasize the need for that, maybe to include tracking of data about the stability of our foster youth in their school placements. And I'm not sure that we're at a point where we're ready to hold schools accountable for that, because truthfully, it's a shared responsibility between agencies, and you need to hold child welfare and schools accountable. But I think if we're not tracking that data, then we're not thinking about the problem, and we're not having the information that we need to really attack the problem.
Are you aware of any states that have started to develop that sort of data set?
I am not. To my knowledge, the first time it was ever done was with the Invisible Achievement Gap Report.
No, we have set up to do the same thing in Arizona, but it's a couple of years behind California, actually.
The other thing I think we need to think about moving forward in future years is not just getting foster youth to the classroom door, but thinking about how we can improve their learning experiences inside the classroom. And as Mr. Jackson talked about, one of the best practices that is really emerging is trauma-informed teaching and learning. We have a whole body of research over the last few years that talks about how trauma affects child development, and it certainly affects foster youth and their ability to learn and be socially connected at school. And one of the things that I would be interested in pursuing, and I think it could be a good legislative effort, is to think about how we can include trauma-informed teaching and learning courses in teacher credentialing requirements or ongoing teacher education requirements. I think a recent study was done, and teachers felt that they didn't have the tools that they needed to deal with trauma. And once those tools were provided to them, their confidence in the classroom increased, the overall atmosphere at school was more welcoming, and problem behaviors were seen through a different lens and were able to be dealt with more appropriately and effectively.
It's good.
So thank you again for the opportunity to comment today and for holding this committee hearing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Molly. So Laura or Christina, any other final thoughts? I said I'd give you any other things you'd like to say just since you're here? You don't need to, but I wanted to make that offer.
Okay. So I just wanted to just emphasize, and and this isn't just for social workers, it's just for all stakeholders to just participate in the academic process with the youth. Because I know when I was in school, my social worker did not, like, we were definitely disconnected in terms of looking for colleges and even being interested in that. So I just want to emphasize, just stay connected with the youth, participate in the academic process, use your sociological imagination. I love that one since I'm a social major.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I think that's huge because I know it's really hard to imagine what we go through, whether it's our trauma or whether, our experience within the foster care system. But just, don't judge us for what we went through. Just assist us. That's basically all we. And oh, and then one other thing: find funding so youth can feel normal in schools. I think my biggest issue in high school was, I had to use my own money because I was working to pay for my yearbooks, my prom, my graduation, my cap and gown. I mean, even high school is a lot of money. It's ridiculous. And so I think if there's any way, that the counties could assist with that, that would be great. And it would make youth definitely feel more normal. Mm-hmm. So that's about it.
Okay. Any other thoughts from you, Laura?
No.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and sharing. And I want to say, Christina, Laura, you did very well. Thank you. Thank you. And I guess only because, you sort of described such difficult circumstances. And so this is something I share a lot. I just want to thank you for being here, and I thank you for persevering in your life and with your circumstances. And I'm sure, you can reflect upon life at times, why me? Why do I go through the things I go through? It's not easy, I'm sure. I reflect upon the fact that I often say my favorite public building in downtown Sacramento is not actually this building, the Capitol, but it's the one across the street. And the one across the street was the first office building California built. And it will relate to this conversation. So here in this young state of California, they are trying to build their first office building. And so it's like, what is the message you carve in the granite to future Californians in the first office building? And the message across the street sounds kind of funny because it sounds like it's a guy thing, but it's people. It's bring me men, bring me people to match my mountains. Early Californians came here by wagon. They had to come over this mountain range here to the east. And on the other side, it's like a rock wall. And so that message says that what California we're looking for is people who can see a challenge in front of them, can decide nothing is going to stop me from getting over that obstacle. No circumstance can stop me from getting over that obstacle. That they will engage in teamwork where they can to get over it. Once you get over one hurdle, you sort of have the toughness to say, now the next hurdle's in front of me, but nothing will stop me. And it's really a message just about how important it is in the state of California to have people who have faced challenge in their life, who have surmounted that challenge, who've just resolved that nothing is going to stop me on the trail, that I will use every tool in my toolkit and every person there to kind of help me to overcome that. So I just want to say, you're finishing up your schooling, you're looking to work in this area, to persevere to become a lawyer that can emulate other great lawyers you've known to make a difference in people's lives. And I just want to say, we don't know why all the things come into our life, but like that building says, I know that There's pain, but there's toughness inside of you. There's perseverance. And I just want to say that, you know, as a state legislator, you are growing something which is very important to our state in yourself as you kind of deal with these things. And that may be a very little consolation, but I thank you very much for being here. And I just sort of wanted to connect your own life experience to, we're all trying to get over mountains here in California. And, you know, either one of you may want to come back here and sit up here and help us do this in your careers. So, all right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.